Thanks for downloading this episode of the Nerdball Podcast, brought to you by Wheaties. Apparently, I have this new camera. I bought a new webcam because I was tired. I was like, why do my videos look terrible? Probably because my laptop computer isn't that great. So I'm an adult, and I spent adult money and got me a little camera. So now you can see everything in the back. This is pretty clear over here. This hi mom, hi dad. Now I need a whiteboard so I can change stuff. Not that I don't want to say hi to my parents every time, but the sign's crooked right here. So man, you can see everything. So a duster without the dust thing. Why is that sitting there? That's ridiculous. Anyway, if you want to see all these things I'm pointing to, go to the YouTube channel, search the Nerdball Podcast. A lot about it. Anyway, I got to stop focusing on that stuff. Anyway, this episode is brought to you by, I don't know if I said, but it's brought to you by this new webcam. How about that? Because this is awesome. Man, it's people still want to come on here and people are excited about it. And sometimes I'm still waiting for people to say no. And maybe it's I'm not reaching out to those kind of people, which is good or bad. I don't know. But I appreciate everyone downloading this and listening to this. It's fun. Like I always say, we're growing incrementally. That 1%, and when you listen to the episode, you'll figure out what that means. So keep doing it. Keep like, share, subscribe. Twitch. I'm on Twitch. Every once in a while, I will stream video games, and I'm trying to incorporate something with the podcast. But let me know what you think about that, or if you have ideas for how to incorporate the podcast into Twitch. Just search the Nerdball Podcast, and my logo will pop up. So this episode was great. We're getting these past two episodes, we're kind of getting away from the model of like, where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to high school? What'd you do? This and that, which it's just becoming conversations, and we're finding all that information out as we go along the episode, which is really cool. There's some awesome information I found out about this guest. So I can't wait for you to listen to this. Again, please like, review, subscribe, share, all those things. Let me know who you want to have on, and we'll keep this podcast train a rolling. So I appreciate you all.
Hi, this is Amy Farrar, and this is the Nerdball Podcast.
This is the Nerdball Podcast with Lorenzo Melcher.
There you go. All right, Amy, thanks for coming on my podcast.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here, Lorenzo.
Yeah, I don't know. I always assume people don't listen because that makes my interviewing kind of streamlined. Like, here's one thing I don't have to, everybody is treated the same. So the first thing I do on this podcast is I ask people what they've been nerding out about lately. So something you've been into, a hobby. It does. I always say lately, but it can be something you've done for years or something you've just picked up. Anything to kind of get you out of the daily, like your daily job, just get you away from like, whatever it is that you do on a daily. But here's my thing that I can just like hone in on, or that makes me feel good.
Sure. Well, I'm such a big nerd. I could probably nerd out. I nerd out on a lot of things, but I'm going to choose to talk about. Lately, I've been reading the book Atomic Habits because I really nerd out on helping myself and then helping my students. Like, how can we become better a little at a time, right? How can we do this? So I've been nerded out on like 1% difference. It says every day makes a 37% difference over the course of a year.
Oh,
And you
wow.
just have to hang in there, right? You just have to hang in there for the long haul and know we're not going to see these linear results. Just wait, and that learning curve all of a sudden kicks into incredible results.
Is that something that you've like learned over like, hey, I gotta like not just like reading the book Atomic Habits, but like, is that something like, hey, what can I do, or how can I like portray this message better to the kids?
I've thought about it first. Normally I read those things for myself,
Uh-huh.
and then all of a sudden I see there's this meaning for the kids, right? If I could just teach them, instead of just doing homework 3 days a week, why don't you just do four? Just do four, right? And pretty soon that 3 days a week, which would be a 60% F, is now a 4 days a week, 80%, and it's a C plus. Like, what a huge difference from an F grade to a C plus.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is work one more day.
Mhm.
One more. Yeah.
I know. I remember. Well, I'll let everyone No, you were my English teacher my freshman year.
Right?
I was a new student in the district too as a freshman. But what I do remember about you, and I'm sure it hasn't changed, and every time I see you, but every time we'd go in, like I enjoyed English class because I went to a grade school that a lot of my teachers were just like grammar, like they were really hammered it. So I liked it. And but you always seemed like um you were just so excited all the time. Like you were excited. Like that's what I remember most about you is like, oh, you have at the time it was Miss Hokenettle. It's like you have
Yeah.
Miss Hokenettle. And you know, it was always described as like quirky. And then as I got older, I'm like, oh, she was just like excited and she wanted to be that way because that's what everything came across more to me. You know, I can't speak for any other classmates, but to me, it was like I was excited to like be in there, you know.
Lorenzo, I remember way back your freshman year, you were still a big guy then,
Yeah, oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I remember you coming from St. Rose, and St. Rose does an exceptional job of teaching
Well,
grammar. So that,
actually, it's similar. It
oh,
was a Catholic school. It wasn't St. Rose, but it was a Catholic school. It was Our Lady of Lourdes in Toledo,
oh,
but
it was a
very
Lady of Lords.
similar
Thank
vein.
you.
Yes, yes,
Thanks for correcting that.
yes,
So yeah, and I just remember grammar. They just hit grammar really hard,
yeah,
and so I'm like, he's going to be good in grammar, but we're going to probably need to work on other things. Let's find out if that's true, right?
yeah.
And I remember you being a little reserved at first, but
Oh yeah,
then pretty soon, then like, okay, I see some personality in there. This is going to be great. I like this kid, right? He's nice. He's definitely respectful. And then all of a sudden, some personality, so, like a little joke here to the classmate, a little joke in our class conversation. It was great. Yeah. And
yeah.
we were portables back then. Do you
Yes,
remember
yes.
that?
I do remember that because I remember taking my what because I had a couple friends. I think Adam Gumpf was in that class too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Because how I remember is that when we did our exams, for whatever reason, I don't remember the schedule, but we did 3 on one day and then 1, 2, 4 the next day. So my English class, I think it was either English or math, but it was 2 and 4. So, but they were in the portables right next to each other. So I remember me and Adam just like going from one exam and just we had like 15 minutes, but we just went right into the other one, just sat there. Probably didn't say a word to each other.
Probably not. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. There isn't a lot of class. I mean, a lot of the classes and a lot of teachers I had, like especially freshman year, were like important because it was because I think I had I don't know if that was freshman year or sophomore year. It might have been sophomore year, but even then, like Mrs. Harvey, who is now Okenka, you know,
Oh
I had
yeah.
her too, and same thing, like her personality, like I do not like math. And I tell the athletes that too. I was like, hey, you got to be good at math. I was terrible. It's just if you like it, cool. But again, like she made it fun, and that's what that's like teachers like you. And I remember I'm going to celebrate my 20th reunion this year. Like I
Oh,
remember you from that long ago because it made like not necessarily like you taught me a lot, but I think what you taught me most is like, hey, if you're excited about this or whatever it is, like there's a lot going to be a lot of kids that are excited about it too.
yeah. I will say you mentioned that about am I kind of hinting at am I still this excited person in the classroom? And I will say I think my students would say definitively yes. And Corky can go with that, and I'm okay with that.
Quirky, I never see it as a bad thing. There are staff members I have where I work where they're quirky, but it as long as you understand yourself, then everything, you know, everything plays to your advantage.
Right.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, it's really, sure, I still geek and maybe I'll say nerd out would be a
yeah.
much better word to use on this show. I nerd out on even teaching, not just literature, but even teaching like a colon.
Mm,
But what really gets me is when the students walk in the door.
yeah.
I've, I actually was a little worried. This year is my 36th
Oh
year,
wow.
and
Okay.
I could have retired. And so I was worried, like, man, was I stupid to stay? I could be playing golf today, right? Yeah. And then I realized, okay, you know what? The students walked in that very first day, and I'm like, no, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
You
Yeah.
know, I had that. That's funny. I had that same exact thought. Last year was gonna be my last year coaching football. Like I was still gonna volunteer and still like be a part of it. I just with my job, and my kids doing other things, you know. And I told told Dirk at the beginning of the season, like, hey, I think this is gonna be my last year. You know, I just got a lot of stuff, and he's like, all right, you know, well, I appreciate you telling me. You know, we can find someone to replace you, this and that. And then as the off season kept going, or as the season kept going along, then the winter came and we had a meeting, and we talked about it, and I decided to come back. And my wife Andrea, she's like, I knew you weren't going to be able to, but our first summer practice in June, as we were walking, like either I can't remember if it was after or before, but I stopped and talked to Dirk. I go, as soon as I got out here, I felt like, yes, I'm supposed to be here.
Was it because of the kids, the
Yeah,
players?
100%. Yes. Yes. Like I love coaches. I like some of the best conversations we have in that coach's office. But as soon as I started seeing players, hey, Coach Melcher, I was like, yep, I'm supposed to be out here right now coaching these guys.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That makes all the difference, because it's not just the imparting your football knowledge, but do you ever feel like you vibe off them? Like they get excited, you get more
Mm.
excited. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, all the time. And I've had conversations on here with other coaches and teachers where it's like the football part of it is, like, for me personally, like I will be classified as a player's coach. Like the football part of it is important, and I know that, and this is what we got to do, and we have practices for that. But the other stuff, like building relationships with them and talking to them and doing all that stuff, that's more important to me. I like that aspect about coaching. And I think that's what I missed when I thought of like, hey, I'm not going to be out there anymore. Well, I'm going to miss that part of it.
Right. And I feel like, especially running into different places as, you're a dad and and a husband with kids and moving on in life, I feel like you've become much more extroverted and a people person. So I can see why that's so important to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never, if you asked you made mention of it. Like, I would never have thought like I'd be talking to people like this and just being out there. My wife makes fun of me. She doesn't like going to the grocery store because we're always going to be stuck in a conversation somewhere because I'll see somebody I know. But it's completely changed. Like, I was always like this with my friends, like my core group of friends. We're together. We're all best friends. Here it is. But if I got outside of that, I was not going to talk to people if I didn't have to, So I made a point like to try to teach my son, because my son's like me, like real quiet, doesn't want to have conversations. So whenever there's adults around, like, and adults are pretty good too. Like, hey, we know kids are learning, so I'm gonna try to have a mini conversation with this kid to
Right.
to help him gain skills and stuff. But that's the kind of stuff where I remember when, and he's little, he was like 3 or 4. This girl, maybe he was even 4 or 5, but this little girl, they were playing at a playground or something, and she like waved to him and said hello, and he like looked at her and looked at me and just went and like walked away, go say hi or something.
Just say hi, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little girl's just trying.
Yeah,
Right.
it was so funny to me. But yeah, I would never envision this being what I am, who I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You were initially quiet and reserved in class, always respectful. Like if I called on you, you'd have an answer, but it's that relationship that you
Yeah.
talked about. Like we got along well, our class got along well, and all of a sudden, people start talking a little bit more.
Yeah.
And
Do you find that now? I would imagine every year there's like, um, maybe not someone you spend like extra time with, but you just pay attention to them more to say like, all right, this kid needs something more, or I need to put this kid when we do group projects, they have to work with this other kid because they'd be a good match or whatever. Do you try to do you ever focus on that kind of stuff?
yes, a lot actually. I have a funny story about it and maybe a serious story about it.
Sure,
How's that?
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, go for it.
All right. So when I assign seats and I switch them every unit of the year, because I think it's important for whoever is sitting next to you, get used to the idea that you don't get to pick who you work with, right? On the
Yep.
job,
Yep.
right? So you better learn how to work with everyone. And so normally I'll put somebody who um, like they both understand material really well next to each other, and two people who don't, because then it forces the conversation. I used to put them next to somebody who understood it really well so they could explain it, but I realized that kids benefit a lot more from the struggle together. But at other times I'll call them matchmake them, right?
Yeah.
I'll put them together side by side because this kid's really quiet, and so I pick the most positive extroverted kid who's just going to love on them, compliment them every day, say, good morning, how are you? How you doing? Right. And pretty soon that kid comes out of his or her shell. Right. And some of them have so come out of their shell that they've become leaders in our classroom and in our school afterwards, which is really cool.
Yeah.
One who barely made it into honors is now in AP English this year. She said zero volunteered contributions for an entire semester. Oh, maybe it was like that 1%. And then you couldn't shut the girl up. It was great. It was time, analyzing some difficult literature, The Awakening, right, by Chopin. And here she is, like, Victoria's got her hand up, right? She's got it, right? So, and the class literally clapped for her on several occasions because they could see that improvement.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love to. That's obviously what we were looking for, like teachers, coaches, even supervisors at work. You're looking for that little increase, like you said, that 1% that turns into compound interest. We'll say, like, as it gets more and more, and you want to feel so good about yourself, like, hey, I helped make this happen. And maybe it was just all it was for you putting this person with another person, and then you were off. Like, that was it. That's all you did, right?
Exactly. I barely have to do anything. Kids are great if we just give them a chance to be great. Right?
That's good.
And so you put them together, and it's karma. Now all of a sudden the kids experiencing so much more progress and success and happiness too. Like their eye contact improves, even their posture improves. It's awesome. And when the whole class claps without a teacher going, starting it, right? Just explode in applause for a kid because they're so proud of them too. Like, that warms my heart. That juices me up.
Well, that's why you came back for a 36th year.
You got it. Although I will say, you had asked what I'm nerding out on. I've been nerding out for a couple years, Lorenzo, I want to write an article, maybe a book on relational learning. It's the theory I have. I just think that everyone learns better through relationship. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so who do you think you've learned the most from in life?
Probably, I would have to say probably my parents. And some of it, like for me, some of it is I learned how not to be a certain way, and some of it is this is the way I should be doing things, based on how they coached me, or parented me, or just me watching them when they're not paying attention, sometimes, like, but I learned a lot from them, again, positive and negative.
Right. I like that. It's interesting, the positive and negative part. Yeah, I think we learn the most from the people that we are closest to. And I think that's because we know we're in our safety little zone here, right? So we can make mistakes. They're not going to abandon us, right? They probably love us unconditionally, so they're not going anywhere. We can make another mistake, and they're still not going anywhere. They're not going to judge us. They might, criticize or poke or tease, right? But they're going to be with us through the long haul. And that's why I think teaching teachers to get a classroom where they are so safe, right? They can have the courage to take risks. That's when kids thrive, because all of a sudden they can start making mistake after mistake. Is when you win the most, right? Think about a football game, right? You win a football game, right? And you've won some, you've lost some, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I can't remember. What was the record your year?
My senior year, we were terrible. We were 2-8.
2-8. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of learning. All right. But I feel like you always learn more when you lose. When you win, you're like, yeah, that was awesome, right? And then after it was awesome, you just carry on. But when you lose, you're like, I don't know, like, if I'm playing a tennis match, like, was it my forehand didn't have enough topspin? Should I have been more aggressive? And then in my next match, now I'm doing better because I learned those lessons. But if you don't have a safe environment to make those mistakes, and that relationship isn't there, right, of support, then you're not going to grow as much.
That's great. I really like that. They because it's true. Like, even at work, I tell my staff members, Like you have the freedom to make decisions about whatever you're working. Like we're going to give you a task. Sometimes the task is mow, and there's only there's only one way to do it. You got to mow, right? But sometimes there's different tasks that you do, and you decide like how you're going to do it, how who you need, or and other times you run out of tasks and you got to find other things to do. Like I'm always going to have your back when you are making these decisions. If they fall apart or if they blow up in your face, I'm there with you, and I'll tell my boss like, hey, this is what we decided. It didn't work, but we're reworking it. And I said the only time I will not be by your side, I will still be there, but I will be more critical is when whatever you did was unsafe. Like other than that, make decisions. I'm empowering you to do what you want to do. It makes them become better leaders if they're working with a group. Also, for me, it limits phone calls and texts to me when I have other things I got to do. Like, okay, this one text can be eliminated because I gave them the power to decide what kind of bolt to use or what kind of wood you need for this project or whatever. Then it helps me in the long run, as just building a better staff. So as a student in a classroom where you feel like I can raise my hand and ask this question, it may sound silly, but I know my classmates and the teacher, even if it is silly, they'll chuckle and we'll maybe have a laugh about it, but then we'll get serious and figure out the answer or whatever. But that also makes a good environment when there is jokes and laughter and tears and all that kind of stuff and everything, and it's okay in there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, maybe when I retire, I should come work for you and Mo, because I'll tell you that's the type of boss that I like.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for not micromanaging. Thank you for trusting me to make some of the decisions. And if I really, like you said, you can't do something that's unsafe.
Yep.
But it also frees you. I feel like too many bosses are so, really, I feel like they're controlling because it's fear. They don't trust their employees to have the level of commitment they have, and attention to detail. So they'll just tell them how to do everything. But you're right, it does free you. You've said that twice now, that it frees you to do what you really want to need to focus on. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if that there are times, and my assistant is more precise about certain things, and there are times where we'll walk into a building after it was cleaned, and there's things that weren't done that we would have done, but that's the time of like, all right, gang, come in here, let's look around. Here's what we saw. Here's how we can make it better. And then we give, then we go through it. But again, that's the learning part of it. Like I want people to learn things. I don't want people to do things because I tell them exactly how to do it. It's no fun for anybody.
No, and then you feel like you have to teach them every time and instruct.
Yeah.
Right. And that is no fun. Yeah. Nobody wants that finger pointing at them all the time, in this task list. Just, hey, here it is. Go get it done.
Yeah. And I think that's why like some subjects are for me, because I thought about being a teacher for a little bit, being a history teacher, but there's some subjects lend more to especially English. Like what are your thoughts or what are your interpretations of this thing we're reading, as opposed to math where it's like, all right, this plus this equals this, and it's just the way it is. There is no interpretations. I'm not the structure part of it. I understand, but I like the openness of conversation or thoughts. Try to get something out of kids.
Yeah, I love the openness too. Everyone in my family has a job in math except for me, and I love
really?
math. Yeah, everyone does. Everyone's a CPA, basically, except for me. Right?
Well, I cannot see you as a CPA. So you're perfectly where I think you should be.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Yeah, but I do joke a little bit with Mrs. Mozzarella. I don't know if you ever had her.
She yeah, I did not. She went by a different name when I was in high school, I believe. She was Dedrick, Miss Dedrick, right?
Dedrick, yeah. Miss Dedrick, yeah.
Yep,
so she teases me all the time. She's a little jealous because I get to have these great conversations with students, right? The themes and like what it means about relationships. You look at Romeo and Juliet, right? We get to talk about so many real life events, experiences. Yeah. She's a little jealous that she doesn't get to do that as much in math. And it does let you get closer to students because they're sharing some of those ideas.
Do you guys ever have conversations, or I don't know if anybody does, about like, is there a way to make math like I don't want to say better, but I don't like math, so that's what I'm going to use. like what besides I guess as a math teacher you have to work harder for those relationships, right? If that's what you want.
She definitely does. I
Yeah.
think they definitely do because they're not inherent and natural to the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean the relationships I had with math teachers were based on other things. Like I had Mr. Thompson who was really into sports. And so that
Right.
was the relationship we had, right? Um and Okenka, like her personality was a big part of how we got along. Like even to this day, like we still like jab each other and make fun of each other because that's just what our relationship is. But I remember that, and if it wasn't a good relationship, I wouldn't be talking to her today when I see her or when I help coach her daughter on the JV basketball team, like all that kind of
Right.
stuff. So like it is hard work to do. And the other two math teachers I didn't have as math teachers. It was Mr. Harvey and H, but I had them as track coaches. So that was what we could talk about. So it is hard, but the math teachers I do know, like they have really good personalities, and maybe it's because they have to work on it to build those relationships.
Maybe, our math department used to be known as this really sarcastic crew of sarcastic sense of humor, right?
Yeah.
And they bring that in the classroom. They still have this sense of humor. It's not as sarcastic as it used to be in the Jerry Ames, Chris Harvey era, right?
Yeah.
But Jim Thompson still holds some of that there, right? Um, but yeah, I think they have to have a sense of humor more. They have to reach out to ask kids, "Hey, how's football practice going?" Or like, "Hey, when's your next tennis match?" And uh, get out to the ball diamond, right? Get out
Yeah.
to the court and watch them. But I do know you asked like, how do they deal with that? Right? How do they
Yeah.
make it better? How do they
Yeah.
make it easier? And I know some of them are trying to do a lot more collaborative learning.
Mm.
So here's a problem. You go to this whiteboard over here with a friend and you guys try to figure it out. We took some notes on it, so use those notes, figure it out. So at
Yeah.
least there's a lot more discussion and interaction, and they can joke with each other. Where in a huge classroom traditional setting of teacher up front lecturing to the kids, going through problems, you can't do.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it open. So it's been great to see math teachers being more open to that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, that's tough with numbers when we're just staring at you as you're doing some formulas and looking at Pythagorean theorem and stuff. And you're like, all right, well, when's lunch? That's
Right,
tough.
right, right, right.
Um, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about, I think we were talking about like relationships and having students work with other students. You had I don't know what you called it, a good story and a serious story
Yeah.
about I don't want to if you don't you didn't talk about it, so I don't know if you second guess
I
yourself, but I
I
do
talked. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I wasn't, I just wanted to make note, if we talked about that or if you wanted to talk about that because we hadn't.
The serious story was the Victoria story, where the class applauded for
Oh, got
this
it. Okay.
girl who was so shy she could barely lift her head to
Yeah.
look at her side partner. And then pretty soon she's talking to her side partner. Then she's talking to her Foursquare group. And pretty soon she's offering out answers. So that's the serious one. But I didn't tell the funny story.
Okay.
Should I tell the funny story?
Sure. Sure.
All right, all right. So like, okay, normally I don't do this stuff. I do have to have like this precursor. I normally don't do this stuff. But I had two girls come to me one time and say, "Hey, Mrs. Farrar, right? You change seats every unit. Maybe, this cute kid over here, like maybe you could seat me next to him. What do you think about that? I kind of like him, right?" Well, these two girls, unknown to each other, came after class 2 days in a row. One stayed after one day, and the other's like, "Oh, you go ahead. I'll talk to Mrs. Farrar tomorrow,"
Yeah.
right? Because they both knew it was near the end of the unit. Uh, I'll keep the one girl's name a
Sure.
secret, but the other girl. So one girl's name was Grace, and the other girl I'll call Miss K.
Okay.
All right. So Miss K comes to me first, and Grace says, "Why don't you go ahead first,
Yeah.
right?" So Miss K stays after. "Come on, Mrs. Farrar, come on. See, I know you don't do seating this way, but come on, just once, just once." I'm like, all right, right? And then the other girl the next day, Grace, says the same thing. "I kind of like him. He seems like a nice guy, right?" So I decide that I'll put Miss K next to him first because honestly, Lorenzo, I didn't think they were going to make it too well, right? Their personalities, and
Yeah.
I like them both, right? I like them both, but I didn't think this was going to happen. So I'm like, Miss K, I'm going to give you first dibs. You don't know it, but I'm giving you first dibs, right? So I put them next to each other, right? And I didn't see any fireworks, but
Yeah.
what do you know? I'm the teacher. I'm not looking for that. That's not my job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then the next unit comes up. I put Grace next to him. Well, pretty soon I see that Darcy Kavanaugh is really excited to come to English class every day. And Grace looks pretty darn excited also. They're talking before class every time, right? The bell rings. Okay, they're totally on task. But if I have partner work time, oh, those two look like they're in heaven. Well, just so you know, I think 2 years ago now, Darcy Kavanaugh and Grace Leahy got married.
Oh, really?
Really? And Miss K, I don't know if she's still salty about that or not, but she had her fair shake.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
Yeah. So yeah, they started dating, and they both shared a love of cross country
Mhm.
and some other things, and their faith was really important to them.
Sure.
So yeah, so they are now married.
Oh
All
man, that's so good. All because well, part of it is you putting them together, but having having a relationship good enough where they can go to their teacher and say, "Here's what I feel about this boy. Can you sit me next to him?"
Right, right. And I will say that even though they all did get A's in class, I believe, at least an A minus or something. So it
Mhm.
didn't change their grade any,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it certainly changed their excitability and motivation to come to class.
Hey, whatever gets them there, right? Whatever,
Right.
whatever gets them ready to learn.
You got to just put them in the seats.
Wow, that's such a good story. That's such a good story. Do they like? Have you discussed that with them at
Yes,
all? Do they?
I
Okay,
have. I
yeah,
did end up telling them. I didn't tell Miss K the story, but I believe. Well, I know Grace. I told the story.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. and and she knows like that there was somebody else who wanted Darcy also.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
but apparently his heart was meant for her.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Well, who knows if they didn't sit next to each other, they wouldn't have had that opportunity.
Yeah, you never know. You never know how things work out.
Right? I've had a couple students sit together in class and end up getting married.
Yeah,
I think three couples.
really.
Really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just yeah, it again, you don't know what's gonna happen, and then all it takes is a chance encounter. That's how I mean, my wife and I, Andrea, we we both went to Perrysburg. She was a grade below me. I didn't know her. She knew my sister. But then we went to BG, and I liked her friend. But we would all eat together, like in the student union or whatever. And then eventually, like me and Andrea started talking, and I was a commuter, so I'd go up in the commuter lounge and like take a nap, and she would always text me and wake me up to have breakfast or lunch or something. And
Oh,
so
nice.
then we all eat and hang out, and she'd hand me little notes, and but eventually, like
Okay,
that's what
that's
started, right?
super cute. That's
Yeah.
super cute. You remember what any of those notes said, or is that too personal?
No, it was like, so I used to read, and I forget what it stands for. It was just a men's magazine, but it was like it's called, I think it was like FMH or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but it was like it was fitness, but also had like
Oh,
models in there and just other guy stuff, like nothing terrible. Uh, but it was but I think one of them was like, enjoy your FML or FMH magazine or whatever, and she put little hearts on it, or she'd like as girls do, would heart instead of put a heart instead of a dot over an eye or something. And,
right, right, right. Okay, that's cute.
but I'm sure we have them somewhere because we are pack rats and we keep a lot of stuff. I'm sure they're around somewhere, and we'll find them and we'll show our kids, and they'll be embarrassed for us. But
Yeah, right. They'll roll their eyes, but really they're
yeah,
loving it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it's just those just little encounters or little little. She does like to make fun of me because she said I was too cool for her in high school. I said, Andrea, I moved to Perrysburg when I was a freshman. I had 13 kids in my 8th grade, and I barely knew the kids in my grade, let alone another grade. So
Right. Isn't it funny the perception, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Although her first memory of me is having to take my sister home because I left her at school. So she
You have
I left her. This is the new high school. We live right down the street on Roshan, but she was taking too long, so I just left her, and Andrea brought her home.
Purposely left her,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
forgot her left her. Oh man, that's a little worse, Lorenzo.
At least
She
that's what they
called you
tell me.
out.
That's what they tell me. I don't remember. So,
That's funny. That's great.
but but all those like it's fun that now we're talking about relationships. It reminds me my house when we lived we lived in Saddlebrook off Roachton, and I could see far out down the road down Roachton. And I remember when she said she would like when Andrew we were dating, when she said she was coming over, my bedroom faced east, so I could see all the way down Roachton, and I would be sitting there waiting for her little red car to be driving down the street. So that was like, so I'd be sitting there like, oh, she's coming. Then I got to get stuff ready or do whatever I'm
Right,
doing.
right.
So,
That's great. That's great. I,
uh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it is those little things, all those little hearts over the eye, right? Those little things we were talking about earlier, and it just kind of brings me back to that 1%, right? Like how
Yeah.
much different? What if she just wrote a note like, "Hey, good, it's still hope you have a good day." It's still great,
Yeah.
but I mean, little notes. They weren't long love letters or
Uh,
anything. Just like I'm thinking about you.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
make a difference.
they
I,
compounded. Yeah.
they do.
Do you, so I always think for English teachers, you guys are always like, you're always teaching and reading books, and the class is reading these books, and you guys are going through them. Do you read like on your own? Like, or are there certain things you like to read on your own?
Yes, I normally like to read a lot of nonfiction
Oh,
about, how to become a better person. Honestly, I'm nerding out again, but I like to read books about education. I'm
oh,
reading one right now, and the last chapter I read is How to Help Kids Through Trauma.
uh-huh.
So uh, I always normally read books. I love having maybe 4 or 5 books going on at once,
Oh,
Lorenzo.
really?
Yes, yes. So like I always have one by my bedside that is something spiritual, right? To grow my faith and deepen my faith. And then I'll have one fiction book, just can be a fluff read, right? Or a
Yeah.
book club read. And then I have one that's normally teachery hanging out, and then another one that's nonfiction. So, and I have them different places all throughout the house. So maybe it looks cluttered. I don't know. I don't care. It's my house, right? But wherever I go, it's reminding me like, here you go, read. Here it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I like reading. I just have time now, and it's got to be pretty specific. Like I do like self-help type stuff, but a lot of it, any of those I find are like sports related. I like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. I know a lot of times I will have a sports related. Yeah. What
Yeah.
what kind of books are you reading, or think what do you like to read about sports?
So a lot of it is just like history stuff. I don't like way back, like 1900, this thing happened. I don't like the Yankees, but Joe Torre came out with a book, and I read a book about the Yankees that I enjoyed because I remember things in the book. So like, oh, I remember watching that, so I like that kind of stuff. Joe Madden, who is a baseball manager, he was for the Rays, the Angels. He was on the team when the Cubs won the World Series. Like I'm reading his book, and his is like well, Scott Bucher taught me this. Like when he told me when he reads, he highlights things that he likes, and then when he's done with the book, he takes all those highlighted sections and types them out and has like a file of all these highlighted sections. Like, oh man, that's pretty sweet. I
That's
like that.
cool.
Yeah. So I started doing that with Joe Madden's book, and there's a lot of things in there like, oh, I could use this at work, or this little, because like I said, my staff knows me. I'm a player's coach, and all these quirky little things that I do, like they kind of side eye at it and chuckle, but they understand who I am, and I'm just trying to like be better and help and do all this
Yeah.
stuff. So they still like are part of it. Plus, I got a young staff, so they're more open to that kind of stuff. So that's why I like too. But yeah, just Joe Madden's book is cool because it is about his life. Like, here's how I started, here's the end, but in the middle, like, is all these cool lessons or cool things I can take for my staff, or little quotes and that kind of stuff where I can use and help me. It is like, I don't think it's classified as a self-help book, but that's what it is for me, is like just finding these different tactics I could use.
I do the same thing. I normally sometimes I highlight, sometimes I just earmark it and
Oh.
then go back at the end. I handwrite out all of my lessons that I've
Oh,
learned,
okay.
which ones I'm going to use for my freshmen, which ones I'm going to use for my juniors, right?
Yeah.
Which ones I'm going to use for me. And so I do the same. I pull a little Scott Bucher myself and do that, because if you don't take it forward with you, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
great. You put it aside, but like, how have I become better today, right? How am
Hmm.
I going to help somebody else become better, right? Yeah. So you enjoy that part of life too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember one specific thing in that book that really got to me. He said whenever he would coach a baseball team and he had to have like a difficult conversation or they were playing poorly and he needed to yell at them or whatever, he would never do it in the clubhouse because that's their home. He's like, I don't want their home to feel like this is where somebody yells at me all the time. He would always go out in right field or left field, have that difficult conversation, get mad at them, yell, whatever, and then they could go into their clubhouse or home and feel better. And I told my boss, I go, I think that's something we could do. If there is tough conversations, I never have like we don't currently have a shop. It's getting built. It should be done in the next month or two. But I'm going to try my hardest to not have like tough meetings in the shop. Like if there's somewhere like we can go to one of our rental facilities that and book that out. I'd rather book that out, have a meeting there. That way, when they come into the shop, that's their safe space. That's their place where they can gather their tools and have conversations, eat their lunch, all that kind of stuff, and not think about, oh, last time I was in here, Lorenzo chewed us out.
Lorenzo, I feel like we have some similarities in creating this safe space
Yeah.
where you can feel at home and joke and know they're accepted. But I think you're smart about making sure it's a different spot. In fact, the book I was reading yesterday said a lot of our habits are based on location.
Oh,
And
really?
yes, like you walk in the kitchen, some people immediately go to the pantry and get something to eat when they walk in the door because they see the pantry,
Yeah.
right? Or if it's something sitting out on the counter, I just see those chocolate chip cookies. I wasn't thinking about chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking that I'm hungry, right? But they're in the location that I'm walking through, so I'm going to have one, or maybe three, right?
Yeah.
uh, I believe that creating that safe space is really smart. Lorenzo, do you know that sports has also been a huge part of my life? Did
No.
you know?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So softball was my big sport. Played at BG, and this is the first year that I've actually coached a team. They've been
Really?
after me for a while. The people who knew my background have been after me for a while, and I thought it would just take away from either my family time when my
Mm.
daughter was growing up, or that it would take away from teaching. So I played on this. There's this mom. Oh, Joe Okenka,
Yeah.
Mrs. He plays in the league. There's this mom summer softball league in Perrysburg.
Yeah.
I'll play. Mrs. Ray plays. Lexi Marshall. There are all these teachers, right?
Yeah.
In fact, the one first time I'm up to bat, right? I'm up to bat, and the right fielder is like screaming these like joking criticism, like "Don't you dare hit that ball to me, Amy Farrar!" And I'm like, "Who is out there?" I couldn't
Yeah.
see that far, right? Well, it's Joe Okenka, right? He's harassing me from right field. Anyway, all these teachers, play in this league. I just got on a team, and
Mm.
pretty soon the coach of the team said, "Hey, would you coach our daughters? They're going to be 13 years old, right? Eighth graders. There's a summer travel team." And when you talked about taking your employees off to the side
Yeah.
to have that conversation with them, right? It can be embarrassing and humiliating. So that was one thing that I tried to do when I really need to talk to a
Yeah.
player about something, right? But also that sandwiching, the Oreo, where you start with the positive,
Uh-huh.
then you put in what you really want to correct, and then you end with a positive. So they're open-minded,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
You ended with a positive. So I got two really nice compliments from the girls at the end of the year. One of them said that I give feedback better than any coach they ever had. And this girl, her number one sport is soccer, right? And she's
Yeah.
telling me that about softball and how it made a difference. I'm like, thank you. That's cool,
Yeah.
right? And then another girl, Ava, said, I love getting to third base. Seeing you is just my reward for getting to third base. I'm like, you're awesome, right? Like, how nice is that, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad being a coach. I mean, the best coaches, I believe, the best employers are great teachers, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
That
Yeah.
that I never heard that the sandwich thing, but that makes sense. I do that unknowingly. I didn't know it was a thing, but because I think for me personally, I was like, all right, I don't want to start the conversation off terrible. So here's some good stuff, and then again at the end, like I want to be able to shake your hand or whatever at the end of this conversation, and say we're good to go. But at least you
Yeah.
got what I needed to tell you.
Right.
So, but
And
yeah,
they look at it positively.
yeah, yeah. So it's a good hopefully it's a good feeling as you're walking away, cursing me under your breath or something, maybe, I don't know. um so you said you played softball.
I
What
did.
where'd you grow up? Did you grow up around here?
I didn't. I'm from Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay, all right.
So, but at the time I was looking at colleges. Bowling Green State University was ranked in the top 10 in the nation for special education because I started off as a special education teacher,
Okay.
not when I had you, but after that, and or before that, excuse me.
Yeah.
But I was looking at a lot of schools, some in Pennsylvania, Penn State, and then a lot in Ohio, Kent State, Miami. Trying to think other schools I was looking at, BG,
Yeah.
and I just ended up at BG because of teaching, but honestly, it's the best place where I could have gone. I thought about going to Penn State. They offered me, but it was just too big of a school. So I ended up at little BGSU and play softball. In fact, my senior year, we won the MAC. We got to go to the NCAA tournament, which
Oh,
was
wow.
awesome. Yeah, had a great set of teammates. Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know that about you. That's cool. That's those little things that like just coaching, like say you're coaching those softball girls and you're just out there coaching, they don't know you from anybody, as when you start, but then as you tell them more about you, you're like, oh yeah, I played college, you played college softball, like all these like cool things that you can tell, and then like you're like 1% cooler, or now you're like that much better of a teacher, like just because like of something you did.
You know what? Isn't it amazing how that changes perspective?
Yeah.
The reason I think the women asked, I think some of the teacher friends of mine who played told them about some accomplishments I had on the ball field, right?
Oh, okay.
And so all of a sudden they're like, wait, we didn't know this, right? Hey, let's go to the coach, right? So yeah, but it's just something I did so long ago. Like, really, does that really matter today?
Yeah.
Right? But apparently it did.
What position did you play?
Freshman year, I was third base and left field because depending upon who was pitching. Then junior year, I went to center field,
Okay.
or excuse me, sophomore year, center field. Junior year, our shortstop graduated, so I went to shortstop. And then senior year, we recruited a shortstop, which was probably really wise. And then I went back to center field, which was probably my number one position.
Okay. All right. Do you remember your batting average when you left?
Well, okay. This
Were
is a
you a
little,
fielder? Were you a defensive player?
this is a little awkward for me.
Oh no.
So I I think it was something like 469. In
Okay.
fact, that year
Okay.
I didn't even know till last year, Lorenzo. So my senior year, that was the second highest in the NCAA that year.
Really? And you didn't even know?
I didn't even know until recently. Somebody was asking me, like, "Do you
Oh,
still hold all those records?" I'm like, "I don't know, right? Why am I busy looking up that stuff? That's
yeah,
so
yeah.
far in the past." And so I looked some things up. I'm like, "Holy cow! Okay, maybe I was pretty good." Yeah, yeah. So
Oh my. Yeah, just the second best record in the entire country. That's or
yeah.
a batting average. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, I always thought of myself as like my key to my success was my speed.
Okay. Yeah. Well, center
Because
fielder, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, I actually senior year I was the number one base stealer in the country. Yeah.
Is
So
that something? Is that something you remember? Or did you have to look that one up?
that see that one I knew. I didn't know
Okay.
about the other stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, that is no small thing, and hopefully you remember that kind of stuff. But it is things like if you're teaching a girl how to steal, like, hey, pay attention. I was the number one base stealer in the country my senior year, so maybe you might want to listen to me, especially if it's starting to become frustrating.
Right, right. No, actually, I was never frustrated with the girls,
It's
except for
good.
maybe, I have to remember their attention span might be a little
Yeah.
short. So like some things up, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but it was really fun. And I think all the coaches were so humble and just turned over the coaching to me. Like, do
Mm,
you mind if I say something about this? Or they're like, are you kidding? Go tell them, right? Because they, I think they researched and found out more about me.
yeah.
Um, I, so I was an All-American
Yeah.
and academic first team, but softball second team, right? And so I think they found out this stuff, and they're like, "What are we doing? Not recruiting this chick to coach, right?" So
That's
it's
awesome.
and the girls found that out. So I think you're right. They were more likely to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been coaching. This will be my second year coaching a travel softball team. I coached the eight U travel softball team last year, and I'm the coach for 10U now. My daughter's in 10U. Um, but it is I've coached everywhere from 5-year-old football flag football to obviously 18-year-old kids on the varsity football
Right.
team. This have been the last year and just last year because that's all I can't speak of what's happening this year because we've just started.
Sure.
But that was the most difficult coaching job that I've had to do. Like it was a combination of me not knowing a lot of things, like just learning. I had great assistant coaches that helped me a lot. With me being so busy, there were sometimes games I couldn't make or practices I was late to because of football in the fall, that kind of stuff. But it was just trying to understand softball. It was a sport I obviously didn't play and
Right.
didn't really pay attention to. The last time I coached it, I think I was 17. I helped coach my sister's softball team, but it was difficult. A difficult year. I had a lot of fun. The girls learned a lot, but it was just my style of coaching them. Um, just doesn't always mix well with parents, and that was the tough
Ah,
part for me this year. Is like, all right, this is what I'm doing because I think this is what's right for the team. And then it kind of so I learned, all right, at the beginning of the year I'm going to tell them this is how I coach, this is what I'm looking for the team, so there's nothing unexpected. Like for me, the most important thing for these girls is to learn new skills, develop their skills that they already have. If we win games, cool. If we don't, fine. I'm fine with that too. I value practices and scrimmages way more than I do games because games, a lot of times you're just yelling at them to go here, do this, do that. And practices that
right.
can take time. Here's what this drill is. Here's what we're working on specifically. I mean, I think I used 20 minutes last practice last week on cutoff drills. All right, I'm going to throw a ball in the outfield. The shortstop, the second baseman is going to go out if it's on the right. The shortstop's going to go out if it's on the left. You got to line yourself up with second base in case the throw's bad. All these things.
Right.
But we spent like 20 minutes doing it, and I think that's all
That's
the stuff we need, right?
that's fabulous.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. So, Lorenzo, when you said that you had a coaching technique and style that was different, how would you describe your style?
I
And
I
why is it so different from
So
what
I
they're
think for me for 8U, like I wanted to practice a lot and I wanted to scrimmage more because they're 8 and 9. Um, I'm a parent. I get wanting to watch your kid play the game part of it because that's what the parents are like. Is it fun watching practice sometimes? Yeah, it is, but it's more fun as a parent watching your kid play a game because
right.
that's the fun part of it. And that just didn't mesh well with some parents that they wanted more games and I didn't.
Uh,
So there was kind of a butting heads there a little bit.
yeah,
Everything's fine now. Like it's
sure,
not. I'm not going to lose sleep over it, and
sure.
hopefully they don't either. But that was my style. Is like, hey, I want to teach these girls skills, and the best way to do that is practices and scrimmages and not games. So what happened. I'll tell you because I mean everyone knows what happened is I was the head coach for the fall and spring season, and then I was not the head coach for the summer. I was still the coach. I was
Right.
not the head coach because I didn't agree that we should be in a league and also play tournaments. So we only played 2 tournaments, but the league we had no practices in the summer. It was all games. So we just couldn't slow it down. In my opinion, we couldn't slow it down as much as I wanted to. So I said, "Hey, I understand you guys want to do this thing. I am going to step back. Someone else can take over, and that way more games can happen because that's what you guys want. I'm not gonna what you guys are paying. I'm not gonna the majority of you want this, so this is what's gonna happen, and everything's fine. But that was the tough part for me. Is like, hey, we are a C-level team. We are learning. Everyone's learning things, and the best way to do that is practice and scrimmages.
Yeah, that was so wise of you to step back to know the conditions aren't right for how I like to run things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to step back and let someone else take the lead because they want something a little different.
Yep.
And I totally agree with you. If you're going to excel at anything, and again, here I am bringing Malcolm Gladwell, Blink, right? That the difference between the most exceptional musicians in the world that are playing at Carnegie Hall and the ones who are doing it for a career is 10,000 hours of practice.
Yeah.
Practice. And I totally agree that practice is where you learn. Games is just the fun, right?
Yeah.
But I had an opposite experience where I had girls who were playing on two teams sometimes. So their upper level team was doing tournaments. So that meant during the week, we played on one night a week. And that was the only night I saw them. We did not practice
Mm,
because they were practicing for the other teams. And suddenly I had to, my only opportunity
yeah.
to teach the girls was in warm-ups and during the game, which is honestly horrible in
Yeah.
my opinion. But if that's the only opportunity I have, I'm going to seize that opportunity, right?
Hmm.
So trying to coach girls at third base in the middle of a game, right? At times, the first base coach is like, "Hey, they didn't do what I was asking them to do, right?" But subtly, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I was just talking to them about the mistake they had just made." But I said, "That's my fault, not theirs," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just couldn't lose that teaching moment, right?
Mhm.
So it is a challenge. I believe in practice also. How
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah. That it's and there's my daughter, and I don't know why she like gets nervous for games. Even though like she loves the spotlight. Her and my son are completely opposite. Like she loves the spotlight. She wants to be in it. You know, she's a baton twirler. So she we
Oh
were
wow.
just at University of Cincinnati yesterday in front of a sold out stadium of who, you know, God knows how many people were there, but they was completely sold out. And she was doing a baton routine on the field, you know, with the rest of the band and stuff. So like, but she wasn't nervous about that at all. But for whatever reason, softball, and maybe it has something to do with me like being her dad and her coach, you know. But I constantly tell her like, hey, I'll be upset at a mistake you made, but I'll talk to you about it, and we'll go forward or with this or that. But she
Yeah.
loves practices, like because that's when. And this is the environment I'm trying to build. That's when the girls have the most fun, is because that you can laugh and joke and do all that kind of stuff. Yes, there are times where I'm trying to, like, coaches are trying to talk, we're trying to show you something and we want you to pay attention. But in the meantime, you know, that's what she likes the most, because I don't think she gets that as much from a game, because you're either in the field and there's a girl or two on the bench, or you're all on the bench and you got to pay attention because people are batting and you know who's up next and that kind of stuff. So it's just
Right.
faster. The practices slow everything down, and it just makes more fun for everybody.
I agree. And it's obviously not you. If she loves practice with you, it's not you on game day,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point. Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
the nerves. And maybe
yeah.
how long has she been playing softball?
This will be her third year playing,
And how long has she been baton twirling?
since she was. That's another good point. Since she was 3.5, I think 4,
There you
something
go.
like that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So maybe the nerves will go away when she starts feeling more confident in her game. And
yeah.
who knows, maybe I'll be her coach in a couple years. How old is she now?
She's turning 9 next month. Yeah,
Okay, I got a couple years for if I
yeah.
keep coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's I don't know how long she's gonna baton is her thing. Like she practices 3 times a week year round, goes to these big competitions, you know. And I'm trying to, again, as a selfish parent, like I want her to play softball. I want her to, she hasn't even tried volleyball, and she's going to be at least 6 feet tall. Like she
Oh
hasn't
wow.
done this stuff, you know. And she but I just can't pull her away from that, which is fine. You know, she found what she really likes, and she has a really good teacher. Andrea Whiting, she works for or she does sophisticates. I think she works at the junior high, I believe. Um, but like she loves all of it. And again, as a selfish parent, it's difficult because I see her compete like 3 times a year because of this, just the nature of the stuff. Like she goes to parades, and you know, I'll go to practice every once in a while and I can see her, you
Yeah.
know. But the big time competitions, where as a coach of a varsity sport, that's what you want, you know.
I,
I don't see those very often because they are few and far between. So as a parent, I would love her to keep playing softball and possibly, you know, try basketball and volleyball, but I don't know if it's in the cards.
Lorenzo, do you have a what's your theory about I don't know, I feel like when I was little, I got to play all these different
Mhm.
sports. But now if you don't specialize, you're not going to see playing time. And who really wants to sit there on a bench all the time, but show up at practice every day.
Yeah.
What's you're talking about your daughter playing, volleyball and not just being a majorette and softball, maybe even trying out basketball. Do you want her to have the experiences more, or
Oh
would
yeah.
you have her just excel at her passion?
No, I want her to do all the things that she wants to do. If she wants to do these other things, then great. Like I want to be a part of that. And a big reason why she's playing softball, I think if I don't coach, then she won't play. But that remains to be seen because I've only coached. This might be my last year. We'll see. But so I do want her to experience the things because as a coach, I want my football players to do all these things, and I want any athlete to do as much as they can year round because that only makes you better. I mean, there's studies out there all over the place that it makes you a better whatever sport you do want to excel at. It makes you better at that sport. So I want that for her, and I want that for my son. And they as much stuff as they want to do, I want them to be able to do it. Now, that being said, if they want to play video games, there's a limit on that, right?
Right.
So being outside, all that kind of stuff. So I want to foster that because I think that's important.
I do too. I do too. I
Yeah.
think the best athletes make the best players in that sport typically because they've had those experiences. The skills, all the
Yeah.
research supports that.
Yeah. I even tell the parents of the girls I'm coaching now, like I try to schedule practices. One week it's going to be Tuesday, Thursday. The next week is Monday, Wednesday. And I say, I understand the girls do a lot of stuff. There's soccer, and my daughter's in baton. There's volleyball now, So if you can't, I'm never going to have like, all right, it's practices every Monday and Wednesday for here into eternity. Because if you're in something else, you're never going to make one of those days.
Right.
So, and I tell them, if you miss, you miss. I'm not going to be upset about it. We'll see you the next practice, or we'll see you on the Sunday at the game. That kind of stuff. Because I know how important it is to me, and I want them to know. Also, I'm not going to be there for sometimes too. So if I say, "Hey, you got to be here," and I'm not there, then what kind of coach am I? So, but it's important to me. Like, you play as much stuff as you can. Your parents obviously think you can handle playing softball and something else. So I want to give you the opportunity to be able to do all that stuff too. Plus, you're 10 years old. Yeah, go do everything.
Right. Sometimes I feel like we make kids specialize so early on that they don't get to enjoy all these experiences in life that make them better people, change, expand their friend group.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's another good point. There are different people in different sports who you may never talk to unless you do that thing. Yeah, you could play volleyball and basketball and then not do a spring sport, but then one year you decide, oh, I'm going to do track, and then meet all these new people because you decided to do track one year.
Right. And some of our greatest sports, like majorettes, we just had two majorettes. I know they went to national, like international.
Maisie and Ellie. Yeah, they went to Liverpool. Yep.
Yes. And I hope that Perrysburg more and more recognizes that. You look at our rugby team, our girls rugby team and our boys have been top performers in the state of Ohio for a while. And there's definitely a different mentality of the kids on those teams.
Oh yeah.
On perhaps the gymnastics team, right? And both are good. They're just different mentalities. So you can meet different friends.
Yeah. And that's a hard part for me too, for Lillian and doing her baton, because she does do it year round. We make sure she gets there. She does do her other stuff, which is good. But for me, it's like, she really likes it. Again, selfishly, I want to see her do more stuff. But then I'm trying to see at the end of this too. Like, she went to Cincinnati yesterday. One of the twirlers there who goes to Cincinnati went through the sophisticates that she goes through. Ellie, the one who just came back from Liverpool, is now a twirler at University of Illinois. And then Maisie, the other one, she wants to do it in college too, and she just went to Kentucky to do a twirler for a day down there too. So like, this program that she's in, this group, the sophisticates, she is sending girls to colleges and to do this stuff. And I see the end part of it, but she's 9 right now, or going to be 9. So it's hard to like look that far, like, all right, well, where's this balance here? And so far, Lillian's been able to navigate it, and, I'm proud of her for that, because it is a lot on her. Like it's 3 times a week. And, and after baton, you got to go right to softball practice. She never complains about it. And the minute she starts complaining about it is when we, all right, well, let's reevaluate here. Like, what do you want to do? Like, you don't have to play travel. If you want to play softball, you can play house softball, and it's only for 2.5 months, and you still get to play softball. You still get to do something, but it doesn't take as much time away from, from what you really love to do, which is baton. So there's a lot of conversation I'm sure we'll have as she gets older, but hopefully, hopefully we're prepared for that as best we can. I don't know how you prepare for that, but we'll try to figure it out.
Well, already, Lorenzo, I feel like if you're already considering the idea, we'll reevaluate it if it's not making you happy, right? That's a great sign.
Yeah.
And sometimes we so overschedule it. They're 10 years old. They want to go to Mr. Freeze and play on the playground, right? But sometimes we overschedule these kids, in my opinion, and they can't just enjoy some free time. And that's why kids get so easily bored, because they've never learned how to occupy their own time, because mom and dad have scheduled everything for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's they remind you of a lot of things too. Like my kids asked me to go play wiffle ball in the backyard, and we have a playground in our backyard that we bought for during COVID. We were supposed to go on vacation, but we used that money for the playground, and it hardly ever gets used anymore. I make a joke now. Now the slide is second base for our wiffle ball. But they asked me to go play, and I'm like, all right, I'm tired. I just got home from I had to work, then go to football, and I'm tired. I'm like, all right, well, let me finish eating here, and then I'll go out there. It was so much fun just to play wiffle ball, to the point now where I bought a strike zone thing that you put it behind the batter, So I bought a strike zone thing. We haven't set it up yet. So like all these things. Or I took Lillian to the park. I work at Glass City Metro Park. I'm the supervisor down there.
I did see that.
Yeah. So before it opened, I took her with me one day. Andrea was out of town, and I can't remember exactly the circumstances, but I took her with me. My boss, I told my boss, he goes, "Oh, I'll bring my 9-year-old." They don't know each other. Became instant friends, running around. There's a splash pad there. So they had their bathing suits on. They're at a playground and this kind of stuff. And then it just reminded me, like, my daughter's like, "You work here? You own this park?" I don't own it, but I run it. She goes, "So we can come here every day." I'm like, if you want to. I'm like, yeah, this is the best. This is awesome. So then it reminds you, that like little kids just being a little kid, being, oh yeah, like this is a cool thing,
Right. That's awesome. That's good.
Well, Amy, I told you an hour. I don't want to keep you. I know I got yard work to do before it gets too hot. So I appreciate you coming on here. This is awesome. This is such a great conversation. It was really fun talking to you. I mean, every time I talk to you, it does remind me again, like when I was a freshman, and how excited you are. Every time I talk to you when it's about something, even that night that HPI, we're babysitting kids for parents, that was a cool thing too. It's not being able to do that very often. So it was cool. But yeah, every time I see you, it makes you smile. You're just so excited about whatever it is you're involved in. And I'm sure that's the same way, out when you're coaching, on the softball field too.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Lorenzo, I have no idea what made you ask me to be on here. My husband asked, "What are you going to talk about?" I'm like, I have no idea what we're talking about. Right?
That's my favorite, though. I never come prepared. I've been prepared twice. One was for the first time I did it. I podcast with Coach Kriegel, just because he's someone I look up to, and I want to make sure this is like really good. Plus, it was really early on, so I wanted to make good episodes. Now I've become really good at interviewing people and talking to people where I don't prepare anything. That way, like if I would have looked you up and found all that stuff about you at BGSU, it wouldn't have been as fun as me finding out live on the podcast. That's for me, that the best way to get information is like when we're just talking, as opposed to me looking at a bunch of stuff, looking, oh, it says here, you did this thing. And then like, yeah, I did it. It was cool. I talked about whatever, but the way it came out was a lot better. So I don't prepare either. I think if it makes me a bad host sometimes or a good one, I don't care. This is how I operate.
I think great interviewers are great listeners.
Yeah, that's what I try to do. I try to do that. Yeah.
Well, thank Lorenzo. I always enjoy seeing you. It makes me smile to see you. You have a beautiful, smile too, and just enjoy life. I feel like I've just been blessed to enjoy everything in life God's given me. So how can you not be happy and excited?
Yeah. It was awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you for asking me.
Thanks again to my guest, Amy Farrar, for coming on the podcast. What a great conversation. Again, like I said at the top of this thing, we're getting away from that structure of beginning to end. And I think I like this better, where we're just jumping into conversations. Those questions are always there if I need them, but I think if I don't get to them, or if they come organically, that's fine too. This is what it is now. And I like the path that it's taking. Let me know what you think. Write me comments on any posts, or shoot me an email, thenerdballpodcast@gmail.com. Or text me. I mean, most of the people I listen to know me personally, so you can probably text me or call me. Let me know what you're thinking about these episodes. It was great. I mean, finding out how good of a softball player she was, and like just and her not even understanding some of the some of the records she had and that kind of stuff. So that was cool. Obviously, I'm all about learning and talking about being a coach and being a supervisor and running teams and my staff and all that. So that was all awesome things to talk about. But it was a great episode, and hopefully these kind of episodes are still happening. As of today, I'm recording on Sunday morning, the 3rd. I don't have a guest for Thursday, so we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens come then. It may be a couple football players or something. I'm sure they'll be excited about it. So we'll see what happens. So again, I appreciate you all for sharing, liking, subscribing, all that kind of stuff. Check out, we're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, everywhere. Podbean is where I host this. So we're everywhere. Check everything out. I do need to change that Stitcher thing on the end of the podcast now on the YouTube videos, because they no longer assist. And that's what I used. And now I had to go to something else, which is called Pocket Casts. And so I'm on there too. Check that out. It's a pretty good, if you're looking for a new podcatcher, Pocket Cast is pretty good, pretty user friendly. There's a lot of different filters you can choose to decide like what kind of episodes you want to listen to. So it's pretty cool. And you can import your podcast right into it, which is pretty neat too. So so thank you. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to the shelf of crap behind me. Not crap, it's good stuff. Sorry, Dad. It's mostly my dad got this stuff for me. It's cool stuff to look at. Sorry. Thanks to Real JP Multimedia, Cuttlefish Graphics, Perrysburg Junior High STEM Lab, and Big Daddy Graphics for always helping out the podcast. Thanks for listening. See you next time.